Hey guys, Yips here, coming with another video, and this one's actually going to be about the talents that we're going to be running in the Tomb of Sargeras. Now, obviously Warlock have seen a lot of changes in this patch. We've seen a lot of talent swaps, we've seen a lot of buffs and nerfs to certain abilities and certain talents, so I wanted to talk today a little bit about what talents we'll be running on the different bosses in Tomb of Sargeras and why we'll be running those specific talents. So, we'll just go through the bosses. I will include a link in the description below to a Google Doc of all the talents, so you guys can kind of have that as an alternate resource, but I'll also talk a little bit about the theory behind the talents that we'll be running, okay? So we'll start with Gorgoth and move through the 9 bosses. Now Gorgoth is a pure single target encounter, okay? So no adds, no nothing, he's just blast him as hard as you can. So on this boss, you're going to be running Malefic Grasp because you're going to be able to get high drain soul uptime, and there's no adds for you to dot for extra damage for like Writhe and Agony or something like that. And Haunt is just strictly worse than Malefic Grasp on single target. So MG is the choice here. Contagion, again for single target, pretty obvious choice. 15% damage on your UAs is really, really nice. Phantom Singularity, this is a little bit of a weird one. You would think Soul Harvest, a flat 20% increase on a 2-minute cooldown, would be best for single target. However, this dot has just been increased by so much damage on a 40-second cooldown, you really can't beat it. It's over 3 million damage every minute, and that does outweigh Soul Harvest by a little bit. So Phantom Singularity is the talent for single target now. Supremacy is pretty obvious choice here. Service, unfortunately, the Fell Puppy, they cost too many shards, and shards are just too valuable for Warlock. So this is out of the question again. Supremacy with a Doomguard is going to be the best here. And finally, for the level 100 talent, Soul Conduit. There is one variation you can do on this boss if you want. If you don't want to run Soul Conduit, you can run Siphon Life. The difference on single target damage between Soul Conduit and Siphon Life is very, very minor. Soul Conduit does pull slightly ahead, but the big thing that you want to weigh in terms of what talents you want to use for the level 100 tier is, do you want RNG or do you not want RNG? So Soul Conduit is a more RNG talent. Obviously, having a chance to refund a Soul Shard is an RNG thing, while Siphon Life is just a dot that's going to be consistent every single pull. Every single pull you do on Gorgoth, you're going to be doing the same damage with Siphon Life. So if you want a little bit more variance, a little bit of an excitement on a pull, whether or not your shard gen is going to be insane or whether it's going to be crappy or whatever, run Soul Conduit. But if you want that sustained consistency, you can run Siphon Life and do a little bit less damage on average. So it's up to you, but these are the talents that you're going to be running on Gorgoth 100%, okay? Next boss, Demonic Inquisition. Now, Demonic Inquisition is a 2-target council fight with a bunch of small adds, okay? Now, these small adds fixate on targets, and they run after them and try to eat them and do a lot of damage. So, obviously, you're going to be burning down the 2 bosses at the same time, while also trying to kill the adds. Now, Affliction is great on this fight because we have a lot of multi-dotting capabilities, so in the talents, you're obviously going to see a lot of multi-dotting, okay? So, first off, level 15 talents, Writhe and Agony. It's a multi-dotting talent. It's really, really strong for this fight. Agony damage may now ramp up to 15 stacks. Just increasing those agonies really, really helps. And the next one, we're actually going to move away from Contagion here and instead run Absolute Corruption. Now, the reason we run Absolute Corruption on this boss is very important. We run it because then we can use Sacrolash Dark Strike. This ring is amazing in Tomb of Sargeras. It allows us to slow the adds on this boss fight, so not only does your corruption do increased damage on this boss, but you're also able to slow all of the little voidlings on the floor. So really, really good ring, really, really good legendary, has great synergy with the Absolute Corruption target, or Absolute Corruption talent on multi-target. So, you know, you're tossing all these out on the voidlings, they're doing more damage, they're slowing them so they don't get to your friends as fast. Really, really solid talents to run on this boss. The next choice is going to be Phantom Singularity. Unfortunately, these adds do not stack, so we can't run Sow the Seeds, but Phantom Singularity is very good because not only are you hitting both of the bosses, but you're also hitting all the little voidlings that are around when they're spawning. Supremacy stays the same. I do recommend running Soul Conduit over Siphon Life simply because you're using so many globals on Corruption and Agony already. I don't think you'll have the globals to use Siphon Life. However, you could use Siphon Life if you want. But I think Soul Conduit is the best because on multi-target, we don't really have shard problems, and just bolstering our UAs by a little bit can be great for multi-target. So I think this is the talent setup that we will use for Demonic Inquisition. Next boss, Harjatan. Harjatan is a bit of a mean boss. He's basically the Murloc overlord of the instance. He has Murlocs for days. He loves Murlocs. He spawns 4 Murlocs on a cooldown, and then he also does this incubate ability where a bunch of eggs spawn, and then if you don't kill them, they spawn a bunch of Murlocs. This is an AoE fight. This is a multiple target fight. This is a, how do I describe it? Imagine Botanist, but with like, 7 to 8 flowers instead of just, 2. So that's the best way I can describe him. This boss, you can actually use a fair number of talents, depending on which route you want to go, right? Do you want to go mass AoE? Do you want to just use the adds to do more single target? Warlock has a lot of options due to our artifact weapon, okay? So I've actually come out with a lot of different talents that you can use for this boss, but I'm going to show you guys what I think is going to be the best, okay? So I think for this specific boss, I'm going to be using Malefic Grasp, Contagion, Soul Harvest, Supremacy, and Soul Conduit. And you might be like, wait a minute! You just said there's a bunch of adds on this fight. It's like an AoE encounter. Yes, I did say that, but Warlock is one of the few classes in the game that we can actually use adds to do more single target damage. Built into our artifact weapon is, Wrath of Consumption, Soul Flame. We get Reap from adds. We get so much damage from adds that we can toss all of that back into the boss and just Kamehame blast him. So that's why I'm running these talents. I'm running a single target build, but Soul Harvest this time instead of Phantom Singularity, because I can get an increased Soul Harvest from the adds, and I can just sit there turreting the boss and let the rest of my raid worry about the adds. When you're in a higher level guild or you're within a guild of a lot of patters, this is easier to do because they'll worry about AoEing, and you can just blast the boss to ensure a faster kill. However, I did come up with an alternate spec if you do want to run it. I think the alternate spec for this boss is going to be Malefic Grasp, Contagion, Sow the Seeds, Grimoire Supremacy, and Soul Conduit. What this allows you to do is still do good single target, but you also have Sow the Seeds in order to do good add damage as well. So if you want to do more damage, but have it spread out a little bit, Sow the Seeds is going to be the way for you. But if you just want to focus on on single target, which is what I will probably be doing just because it's more beneficial for my raid group, I'll be running Soul Harvest. So I think that these are the two best talent options for this boss in particular. If you want a single target with a little bit of AoE, you could run Phantom Singularity, but I think this is probably going to be the best talent setup for you to be running on that boss, okay? So it's not going to be the highest damage setup, but I think these two will be the most effective ways to kill this boss. All right, let's move on. Sisters of the Moon. This is a boss that just has a bunch of different night elves, and you're just going through them in phases. One of them spawns an owl, and then there's a priestess in the last phase. It's mostly a single target boss fight, which is why I mostly chose single target talents for it. I think it's going to be similar to Gorgoroth, where you do run the Phantom Singularity Soul Conduit build. However, you could use Writhe and Agony instead of Malefic Grasp on this boss because there is a lot of movement and there are a few extra things you can dot on this boss. There is that owl, like I said. There are a couple different things that you could dot, so Writhe and Agony is also a viable option for this boss. You can use either of these talents. I think both of these setups will be good, although it's important to note if you do choose to run Writhe and Agony, make sure you talent into Siphon Life. So again, this is mostly a single target boss that just goes through multiple phases, okay? So basically you're just going to be running single target talents. Not too much of an interesting boss there. Mistress. This is a great boss to highlight Warlock strength again. It's similar to Harjatan, slightly less adds though, but more fun. So on this boss, there are these little pufferfish that you can get that increase your damage by a crazy amount, like 100% crazy amount, and last for over a minute. So this boss is a little bit of a meme, but she's a boss, and then she spawns a bunch of eels that drop a bunch of poop, and then there's tornadoes. And then there's sharks. This boss is fun, but as a Warlock, again, you either choose between going AoE for the eels, or you run single target for the boss, okay? Again, I'll probably be running single target for the boss. However, I will recommend the AoE talent as well if you choose to run that on the boss, okay? So, the talents that I think you guys will be running on this boss is either going to be Writhe and Agony, Contagion, Sow the Seeds, and Soul Conduit, okay? Or you'll be running Haunt, Contagion, Phantom Singularity, Soul Conduit, okay? So both of these builds kind of do the same thing. They both kind of AoE with single target. If you want to run the AoE build, run this. Run Writhe and Agony, Contagion, Sow the Seeds, Soul Conduit. Your goal of this boss is just going to blast the ads, blast the ads, blast the ads. But if you want to be more single target oriented, you can run Haunt with Phantom Singularity and Soul Conduit, and what you can do is you can use the ads to get damage, and then throw all your UAs into your Haunt windows on the boss, and you have a little bit of thrown in AoE there with Phantom Singularity. You can also use Soul Harvest in this build. So I think the two builds that you see a lot of locks running on this boss is going to be MG, or Writhe and Agony, Contagion, Sow the Seeds with Soul Conduit, or Haunt with Phantom Singularity and Soul Conduit. You could probably also throw in Siphon if you're going to run pure single target with Haunt, okay? So I think these are the builds that we're going to be running on Mistress Terzine. The next boss is amazing. Desolate Host is a amazing boss. You transform back and forth between a spirit world and a real world, and they interact with each other, and there's ads going between the portals of the worlds, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a great boss to highlight Affliction Lock Dot Cleave. We get a lot of Reap from this boss, we get a lot of Wrath of Consumption from this boss, we get a lot of different things to increase our damage on this boss, and we're going to be running mostly single target talents on this boss, okay? I'm not going to lie to you guys. This is basically a dot cleave fight where you need to run single target talents. The reason being is at the end of the fight, it's a burn from 30% to 0. So this boss will actually probably going to see some execute Death's Embrace use as well. So on this boss, the best talents that I've found to be running so far was Writhe and Agony, Contagion, Phantom Singularity, with Soul Conduit or Siphon. I think both of these talents are really, really strong for this boss. However, I think all of the level 15 talents are usable. I think that all Warlocks will find Haunt to be viable on this boss, Writhe and Agony to be viable, and Malefic Grasp. I think you can make them all work. I also think you can make Contagion or Absolute Corruption work, and I also think you can make Phantom Singularity and Soul Harvest work. So this is a boss that really highlights your playstyles in Affliction Lock. It's like, do you want a multi-dot with Phantom Singularity? Do you want a single target with Soul Harvest? Do you want a priority damage with Haunt? What do you want on this boss? And you get to choose, and you get to be your own master on this boss, okay? The only thing I will recommend that you 100% run on this boss almost all the time is going to be Death's Embrace once you finish progressing on it, because once you get to that 30% burn, your execute is seriously, it's just so valuable, because if you can make it to the 30% burn consistently, having that extra 25% damage until the boss is dead on average is just you can't put a value on that, okay? So make sure you guys just, pick what talents you want to run for this boss. I probably recommend most locks start out with Writhe and Agony and Absolute Corruption with Soul Conduit or Siphon Life, and then move on and try other builds as you progress forward. But really, you can use any sort of talent setup on this boss, and I think it will work out okay for you. Next boss, Maiden of Virtue, or Vigilance, sorry. Maiden of Vigilance. English. This boss is pretty good. It's a single target encounter with a DPS check. The DPS check is a shield that she kind of surrounds herself with and starts pulsating AoE lights of glory at you that does a lot of damage, and the damage just increases the longer the shield goes out. So if you can think of the Maiden boss in Karazhan, similar to that. So this boss, again, you're just going to be running the pure single target talent build. You're just going to run MG, Contagion, Phantom Singularity, and Soul Conduit or Siphon, depending what you want. You could probably also get away squeezing in Soul Harvest on this boss if you need more damage to burn that shield down, but I think Phantom Singularity overall is a better choice. This boss, pretty basic, just a single target encounter, and you'll just use single target spec on this boss. Next one. This boss is Fallen Avatar. This boss kind of reminds me of Super Mario because when he goes downstairs, it's like a platform that he smashes. I don't know why it makes me think of Super Mario, but it does. So this boss is a single target boss with a little bit of ad cleave. I think on Mythic difficulty only. I'm not sure if it's on Heroic and Normal as well. But there is I'll just talk about the Mythic difficulty. There is an ad on Mythic difficulty that you have to hit at specific times when she gets a shield and break the shield, but then you don't want to hit her. So you only want to attack this ad during her shield because she helps you throughout the fight, but when she gets her shield, she doesn't do anything. So you want to break her out of her shield so she starts helping you again, and then stop DPSing her so you don't kill her. So on this boss, I think the best possible talent setup, again, is just going to be a pure single target setup. I don't think there's any use for Soul Harvest. I don't think there's much use for Death's Embrace. I think either Siphon Life, Soul Conduit with Malefic Grasp, Contagion, and Phantom Singularity is going to be your best bet here. This boss is the Patchwork DPS check of the instance. You need a lot of single target for him, so you just have to run the maximum amount that you can. This talent setup here is going to give you the best options for that. Plus, when the chick gets her shield, you can run Phantom Singularity just to break that a little bit faster, okay? The last boss of the instance, Kil'jaeden. He's a pretty cool boss. You fight him on a demon ship, and he spawns ads, and he does beams and stuff, and there's RP, and there's just a lot of cool things happening. But the talents for this boss... The talents for this boss is probably the one that I'm least sure of because I haven't seen far enough into the boss yet to give you guys an accurate outline for what talents you should be running. I personally was running Malefic Grasp, Contagion, Phantom Singularity, and Soul Conduit and doing very well on this boss because there were ads that were spawning and they lined up perfectly with Phantom Singularity, and I was able to pop this to AoE them and then go back to single targeting the boss and having a really good single target setup as well. We'll have to see in the future what kind of lies for us on Kil'jaeden, but I think this is a basic talent setup that will do well on him. It's important to note that you could probably also run Writhe and Agony as well. Okay, so that's the video. That's what talents I think we're going to be running on some of the bosses. I hope I was able to give you guys some insight towards the bosses. Again, Nighthold this week is going to be kind of a toss-up in the air. I'm not 100% sure what talents I'm going to be using on the bosses, but if you guys want to come out and check out my stream, I'll probably be doing Nighthold on my Warlock at some point during this week, so you can check that out, see what I run, see how I'm doing. You know, come ask me questions. I'm always answering questions in my chat and stuff, so that's cool. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, guys. This has been a talent guide for an Affliction Warlock in 7.2.5, and I will see you guys later. Check out the Google Doc in the below. It has the stuff. It has the stuff. All right, see you guys. Have a good one.